Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Ride or Die. Ride or Die is a Japanese erotic thriller that's based on the manga Gunjo that centers on two characters who reconnect with each other after spending a long time apart, and they slowly but surely start to explore their feelings for each other. The whole rekindled relationship kicks off right from the get-go when Rei, one of the lead characters, brings a guy back from the bar that she was just at to his hotel room, and they proceed to have sex, only for her to get out a knife or a scalpel or something like that from her purse, and then she ends up killing him in the middle of having sex with him. The movie actually opens up with this right at the beginning, and I was very confused with what was happening at first, but then it goes to a flashback scene a day prior where it shows Rei is working at her day job and everything seems normal, and then her friend Nanae reaches out to her after all these years, basically to catch up on old times. And when the two meet up with each other, Rei is horrified to learn that Nanae is stuck in a physically abusive relationship with her husband as she starts stripping off all her clothes and reveals all these bruises that are covering her body. Following this, Nanae requests Rei to carry out a hit on her husband to basically get her out of the situation that she's in, and it's not long after that whole thing happens that the two of them take off and basically try to ride out in the sunset while evading the law. So the main core or heart of this movie, if you will, is definitely centered on the growing relationship between the two girls. There are a few other characters along the way during their journey, but Rei and Nanae are definitely the main focus in this regard. And I found it interesting to know just how different the two girls were from each other, yet they couldn't help but be drawn together. Rei, for example, is very striking visually speaking. She's just an incredibly beautiful woman. She's got a fiery personality and she's free-spirited in nature, and on top of that, she's the only girl in the pair who's actually a lesbian to begin with. Nanae, on the other hand, is a lot more average in appearance. Not ugly per se, but she's definitely a lot more ordinary looking compared to Rei. She also finds that she's imprisoned in her current predicament, and she even resigns herself to her situation as early as when she finishes high school whenever she's 18 years old, claiming that she's going to sell her body to the highest bidder. That highest bidder, of course, being the husband that she ended up marrying and being stuck in an abusive relationship with for 10 years, which brings up another point that out of the two girls, Nanae is the one that's not a lesbian, and she has to basically spend the whole movie fighting against her feelings that she has for Rei and coming to grips with her own sexual identity. These girls both figuratively and literally bare their souls to each other. The best scene in this movie in this regard is when Rei has finished murdering Nanae's husband and she's taken a shower followed by a bath to wash off all the blood in her body, and then Nanae gets ready to join her in the bath as well. It started off kind of weird at first. I didn't know why she was joining her in the bath, but it starts off lighthearted enough, and it becomes increasingly dark whenever Rei has to deal with the trauma of having killed a person and having his blood on her body. And as Rei starts to emotionally break down in front of Nanae, Nanae can't help but break down herself and start to lay her emotions bare in front of Rei. You can tell just from this one scene that there is a lot of history between these two characters, and not all of it is all sunshine and rainbows. This movie is very much a road movie in every sense of the term. It's basically a mixture of the premise from Thelma and Louise with the more queer aspects from something like Blue is the Warmest Color. There's all kinds of crazy hijinks that happen that you would expect to see in this kind of movie, ranging from buying a ton of fast food and having a party in their car, to ditching that car and then going to sleep at a subway station in the middle of a rainy night. There are just so many random things that happen in this movie, and they all range from comedic to intensely dark and dramatic. I've always liked road movies in general because they're the perfect example of a character undergoing a journey in more ways than one. Not only are they going on an actual journey across rural Japan while they're trying to evade the law, but they're also going on a deeply personal journey as they try to understand both themselves and each other as people. Rei is someone who will do anything for the woman that she loves, even kill people, which she does end up doing, but she also has to reconcile the fact that Nanae, the woman she loves, isn't a lesbian and doesn't necessarily have the same feelings for her that Rei does. Conversely, Nanae is someone who's always felt like she had to wage battles against society's expectations of her, and it's not until the movie progresses in its story that she starts to let go of all those expectations and start to become the woman that she really wants to be. I found the use of male characters in this movie as thematic antagonists in this regard was very interesting. I already talked about Nanae's husband and how he basically views her as nothing more than a literal punching bag and a sexual object, but there are other male characters that stood out to me in this movie too, like the taxi driver in particular. That was one character that I thought was really well done. The taxi driver is nice enough to the two girls whenever he first meets them, but it quickly becomes apparent in the next scene that his real intentions are nothing more than to just have sex with them. I found it really disgusting and sleazy how that taxi driver tried to weasel his way into having sex with Rei, but what I found even more surprising was just how willing that Rei was able to reciprocate those feelings, and she does end up actually having sex with him in his car. That taxi driver was the perfect example of someone who pretends to be helpful, but is just putting on a facade for something more sinister. I don't really know the reason why she ended up having sex with him, by the way. If I had to guess, it was because it was mentioned at the beginning of the movie by Rei that she was a virgin at 29 years of age until she ended up having sex with Nanae's husband. And I think she wanted to have sex with the taxi driver without having to worry about the idea of killing someone looming over her head, as well as just general curiosity about what it was like to have sex with a man to begin with. There's another great scene where Rei breaks into one of her family cottages with Nanae, and it's not long after that security calls Rei's brother, and he actually shows up to the property. I'm not going to spoil the whole scene in this review, but I just love how the brother was written in this scene. He comes off as a really old school type of guy that believes that women are meant to be married with men and have families, and how basically these girls need to turn off their queer intentions like they can just flick a switch. I thought this movie was well written and very well done for the most part. However, there are certain problems I do have regarding this movie's presentation, though it mostly has to do with the interactions that happen between Rei and Nanae at certain points in the movie. It just feels like the girls argue with each other too many times in this movie, and then after they finish arguing, they're quick to make up with each other as if nothing happened within the span of a few minutes, and it was pretty frustrating for me to deal with in parts. I also thought that the flashback scenes were pretty unnecessary to the movie's story. Maybe they were important in the manga that it's based on, but there was only one moment in the story where I felt that a flashback was really important, and then the rest of it just felt like filler that didn't need to be there. Honestly, and this is going to sound mean of me to say, but I couldn't tell the difference between who was supposed to be Rei and who was Nanae half the time in those scenes. Maybe if they've gotten the original actresses to portray those roles in those particular flashbacks, it would have made more sense, but for whatever reason they got completely different girls to play Rei and Nanae in those scenes, and it just threw me for a loop quite a few times. Finally, and this is more of a personal preference than anything, but I don't know why they included so many long take shots in this movie. There's a lot of scenes that feel like they go on for minutes on end, especially the sex scene that ends up happening between Rei and Nanae, where they ultimately end up confessing their love for each other. Great scene, and that kind of situation is perfect for a long take type of shot, but there's a lot of other scenes in this movie where I just found it completely unnecessary and just dragged things out longer than they needed to. Overall, I really enjoyed watching Ride or Die. It's one of those rare examples of LGBT films that come out of Japan that I feel is done with class, even if its plot is a little bit muddled. If you're longing for a Japanese movie that covers LGBT themes with as few stereotypes as possible, I think you should check out this movie. Although it's a bit on the long side and some of the little moments between the girls here and there are very grating to watch, I ultimately found their journey to be very fulfilling. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Ride or Die. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the German teen romance Into the Beat. Bye bye!